Childhood dreams fire our imaginations and inspire us for a lifetime. Nowhere is this more true than with the pioneers of monster truck racing.
We come rolling into a dome that's unreal. 60,000 people romping and stomping in the stadium.
You can feel your heart just pumping out of your chest.
And your hands are sweating, your legs quivering.
Adrenaline's up, flashes going off in a stadium.
You're on the spot. You better put this truck on kill because you got to impress all these people.
Sometimes before I would go out to do a run of freestyle, I'd get a little bit nervous and finally, before I pull the belts one more time, I'd sit there and think, you know what, Tom, this is where you always wanted to be. So this is the moment you always wanted to live for. So go have fun with it.
Monster trucks, the science of extreme machines. The sight and sound of a 10,000-pound truck hurtling 30 feet in the air is truly something to behold. Incredibly, it was just a little more than a decade ago when the first monster trucks appeared at various motorsports events and exhibitions throughout the country. Back then, it was more a car-crunching curiosity than a competitive sport. Since that time, millions have attended monster truck events all over the world. But the history of monster trucks is rooted in the farms and fields of rural America. A direct outgrowth of good old American ingenuity and invention.
I'm from a small community, it's a farming community, and there, it's who had the biggest trucks, who had the biggest motors, and it kind of grew into competition.
Over time, tractor pulling became the most accepted method of competition among farmers at church picnics and county fairs. But the young men who showed up with their souped-up pickup trucks quickly found out that their mechanical aptitude could be better displayed in what was called the mud bog.
The mud bog was who could get down the pit the farthest. You'd run through these mud pits, and the pit would progressively get deeper. It's like you'd start off in 18 inches of mud, and these things would be 5 or 6 foot deep. You'd be up with this jacked up truck over top of the headlights, just, cramming it through these deep mud holes. Mud bogging in the day, that was the daddy of it all. When you saw those old big tractor tire trucks bouncing down through the hole.
Back then, mud racing was a very popular sport. Big motors, fast cars. With them came the bigger tires, the bigger trucks, and it escalated into the monster trucks.
I used to do tractor and truck pulling, and monster trucks was kind of a fill-in act at some of the events we were at.
As tractor pulls became increasingly popular, so too did the curious trucks with the giant tires. But it was not until a fellow by the name of Bob Chandler mounted a set of 66-inch tractor tires and called his truck Bigfoot that most people took notice.
He had the first truck that ever lit my eyes with Terra tires. I was like, those things are so awesome. That truck used to look so cool.
But there was more than just Bob Chandler. Monster trucks began sprouting up more frequently, sporting huge 66-inch tractor tires and weighing in at 15,000 pounds. The next logical step was to demonstrate just how destructive a 15,000-pound truck sporting those huge tires could be.
We'd just come in and drive over some cars and crush cars, and people thought it was neat, but it was the tractor pullers that were there, or the sand racers, or the mud racers that were the show. As we progressed and became a bigger and bigger competition, we were what people are coming to see.
It was amazing looking back how people got so excited about just driving off the ground onto a car. Because I used to ride with some of the guys and it was like, this is it.
Seeing Bigfoot, Sounds and Tars, Barefoot, and these guys out here, you know, getting paid to run over a car. I'm like, man, I can do that.
We literally have the cars 2 foot apart, and we'd literally go over the trunk lids, right over the roof, smash the roofs down, crush them, drive off the other side.
And we used to keep the windshields, all the glass in them, and you just bust the glass up, and the crowd would go, yeah, yeah, yeah. If you do that now, the crowd would boo you. They'd throw popcorn on you. You got to fly. You got to jump them, you know.
Thanks in large part to Dennis Anderson. He was not content to simply remain in the mud, so the young mechanic jacked his truck up enough to take on just about any challenge.
Back when we were still crawling over cars at a slow speed, Dennis had a mud truck and came to a show to do some mud racing. They had brought in a bus there. Dennis stepped up to the plate and said, I'll drive over that bus, and actually did it quite aggressively back then.
Back then it was more or less the guy with the tallest and the shiniest and the most KC lights could win. You know, so I didn't have all the big shine and the chrome and the money and all that mess to go with it. So I'm going to go out there and be an idiot in the truck. I'm going to get attention by, check this out. I couldn't show and shine, but I could sure strut my stuff flying through the air. The people loved it, and that's what drove Gravedigger to this madness of Gravedigger. If you came out and you got air with all 4 wheels and jumped over the cars, you were pretty bad. If you cleared the cars, you were real bad. So I always liked to be real bad when I was doing it. They'd always go, he's going to run one pack, because my motor would be lame and like it's maybe going to blow up, and I'd be like, y'all get back. It's one run, and I'm going to run for all it's worth. And I'd fly out there like an idiot and just blow mess all to pieces, but it all worked out.
Gravedigger's popularity was growing, but its status as a legend was not attained until Dennis Anderson squared off against Bob Chandler and Bigfoot.
First time I beat Bigfoot was on national TV, I think it was in 1986. That was one of the biggest highlights of my career, because that was my goal that I set, was to beat that man in his truck in front of a bunch of people, and I did it on TV, so that was an added bonus. It was really awesome, but a lot of pressure came with that too. You know, they expected a lot out of me. When I come rolling through that door, Buddy Rowe, if I was feeling bad that weekend, or even knew my truck might break in half because we're damaged so bad, I could never back down. I mean, I had to go full bore all the time, every time. Wide open, full throttle, high-flying car crushing every weekend.
The all-out reckless abandon shown by Dennis Anderson propelled Gravedigger to stardom. But it soon became apparent that wrecking the truck week after week would make that stardom short-lived. Although the sight of yet another Gravedigger wipeout thrilled the fans, it meant more time, effort, and money spent in the shop. Pretty soon, economic necessity became the mother of invention.
It was pretty simple. When you go out and you break the same thing over and over and over, enough is enough. It was common sense.
The drivers and mechanics of these monsters were now challenged with the task of building trucks that would withstand unnatural punishment without losing any of their original charm.
In the beginning there, it was like, how big and massive can you make these things, and how heavy, and how much can you just crawl up and smash the cars? It was all started out real slow. First you have one truck, and then it's like, well, once you get 2 trucks, oh, you gotta race these 2 things, they're just massive. You gotta race them.
So in 1988, 2 of these behemoths squared off, and the new sport of monster truck racing was born. But the same old problem remained.
Back in the early days, you wouldn't be in competition really with the other truck, because in the early days, the trucks broke so much, if you made it across the finish line, you more or less won the race.
The new excitement created by racing the monster trucks brought more and more people to the tractor pulls. The sport's popularity was growing, but if that was to continue, the technology had to be up to the challenge.
And so monster trucks became the focus. The pulling and mud racing and other elements that used to be the primary draw became the fill-in. So all of a sudden now, we go from an exhibition to a competitive end. As any element of competition comes in, the technology has to go with it.
Once they realize, well, shoot, we're racing now. You got to make them kind of light, and they're going faster, so you want more motor, so you're doing that, and then you're going higher, so then you want more suspension. It's like, it's just one thing leading to another.
Innovation is crucial to any sport. If you don't innovate, if you don't change the normal, you never have the cutting edge.
The early monster truck races were slow. We were slow, we were heavy, and now we're light and we're fast.
There goes the Digger going against UFO. He opens up the lead here. Look at him go, Digger! Over the set of cars and to the win.
When we first started, you know, we had big old leaf springs off of a dump truck, and, you know, we had like 2 inches of suspension on the whole truck. We'd bend the frames, we'd go home and try and cob it back together for the next weekend. Now, today, you know, the technology is unbelievable.
Basically, the trucks all used to be junkyard specials. And the trucks now are state-of-the-art. You know, it isn't that you can just go down to the local junkyard and put some pieces together and have a competitive truck now. The motors are pure race motors. It isn't really even a production motor. The transmissions, the shocks, everything on these trucks, the chassis, are all state-of-the-art.
Indeed, today's monster trucks are a far cry from the mud boggers born on the farms of rural America. Combining new technology with old-fashioned elbow grease, mechanics like Pablo Huffaker continue to evolve and adapt.
I've seen about every innovation you could ever have in monster trucks. When we started out, we were just running 3 and 4 stock frames with leaf springs. I've seen the full evolution of getting away from stock frames, going to tubular frames, getting away from leaf springs, going to coilover shocks, then moving on from coilover shocks to the gas shocks that we run today in full tube frames.
It's certainly no coincidence that Pablo the mechanic is also Pablo the monster truck driver.
You can't really be an inventor unless you can feel and be part of the application. And somebody can describe to you what it felt like, and you can draw circles and pictures and everything you want to, but until you get the concept of the actual inertia, there's no concept.
Early monster truck mechanics learned their craft in countless monster garages. But a new breed of driver is starting to emerge.
I actually have about 10 years of college in different fields. I have an engineering degree from K-State University, Kansas State. Honestly, I went to engineering school because I wanted to work on motors, believe it or not. There's no equation you're going to read in the book that says you got to do it this way, because a lot of times it doesn't apply. A lot of it's trial and error.
Sometimes you can know all the math in the world, and trial and error is what it comes down to, you know, and you never know. You do all your homework, you're crunching numbers on paper and on the screen in front of you, but until you make a part and put it in one of these trucks, you're never going to know if it's going to hold up or not.
My truck's constantly changed. I mean, from shocks to steering to suspension stuff to motors. I mean, everything just keeps evolving.
One element of the monster trucks that did not evolve through the years is the one element that makes these monsters, monsters.
The tires basically are based off an agricultural tire. This tire is what is pretty much the standard tire for a monster truck, just for the obesity of it.
Tires stand 5.5 feet tall, but are also nearly 4 feet wide, allowing the truck's weight to be spread over a large surface area. Developed initially for agricultural equipment, the weight displacement tires help prevent farm vehicles from sinking in the mud or tearing up delicate land. Thoughts that were far removed from the minds of the original monster truck designers.
I believe the big tires were put on just to jack the vehicles up initially when the first few trucks were built.
A great deal of current monster truck technology was developed solely to accommodate the size and weight of the tires.
The tires are obviously taller than I am, just by an inch or so. And they weigh, on an average, 1,200 pounds new, and you can take some of the tread off them and shave it down. You can get them down to 800 pounds.
While they are on the monster trucks, the tires are just too big to transport. That means at each event, tires are mounted and unmounted several times.
It's a job, just loading and unloading the trucks. And if you tire up and tire down a couple times a day, even the biggest of guys, they'll admit it wears them out. You know, it's a workout. Just get those tires in and out of the trailer. If for some reason the tire decides to take a path of its own, you just get out of the way. You can't fight that tire. It will win, you know. So you have your little tricks, you know, of getting a slider under it to move it on and off. And, you know, you'll get some big guys that think they're going to come out there and wrestle it. And my husband will say, oh, wait, let my wife do that, you know. And you get in there with your little tricks and you can slide it right on if you get things set up just right.
Putting the tires on is just half the battle. Keeping them on is quite another story.
Each tire has 2 axles per tire. There's 2 axles, there's the inner and outer axle. Nowadays, the spindles, the axles, and everything are made of billet on these new trucks, where these are just straight out from under a school bus.
For the newer, lighter trucks, it's becoming increasingly rare to find existing parts. So, once again, Pablo Huffaker to the rescue.
Purpose-built steering cylinders, regular steering cylinders like you'd find in an agricultural application. They bend, they blow, they break. So I started building billet cylinders from scratch. Everything's custom built and purpose-built on these. I don't know if you've looked on any of the other trucks, but here on this one, we run a fully orbital steering valve. There's no mechanical hookup actually between the steering wheel and the front axle. These 2 hoses right here do it all. We've got a pump that feeds the orbital valve, turn the wheel left or right, oil goes left and right down on the front axle. You know, so that's how we steer the front end. That's a pretty unique deal there for our sport. No other form of motorsports uses orbital steering.
Because there is no mechanical link from the steering wheel to the tires, orbital steering allows the driver to turn on a dime. But making those sharp turns without rolling over require the development of rear wheel steering.
The tires are so big and we're so wide, the steering radius is, it's just, you know, there's been some trucks out there with no rear steering, and it's just you got to back up, pull forward. It cuts the steering ratio in half with rear steering.
Rear steering is controlled independently of the front. But instead of a second steering wheel, a switch box mounted at the driver's side controls the back tires.
In the early days of monster trucks, we didn't have this thing called self-centering. So that meant after we made a corner, we had to physically operate the switch and bring our rear tires back to straight, and that all came with feel. Today we run a series of switches on there that actually will bring the tires back to straight on their own as soon as we let go of our rear steer switch.
The power to steer all 4 tires at a time gives the driver excellent maneuverability while on the ground. But in the air, the tires serve a different purpose, acting as gigantic gyroscopes.
When you're in the air, you'll hear the driver burping the engine. Wah, 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 when you're going through the air. And that's to keep the gyration of the tires in motion, and that keeps the whole truck in motion. Because if you don't, and you for some reason tap the brake or something like that, it's like a falling rock. It's going to immediately go down.
You take this truck and you charge a ramp. Say you're running 50 miles an hour with the truck. But now these tires are on a planetary gear set that unwinds and slows down very quick. So now when you hit the ground, it's like a big dragging hard hit. Whereas if you keep that thing burping it through the air and keep the tires going, as it nips the ground, you get back in the throttle. It's like shoo, like shooting a rabbit or kicking a skateboard in the rear, you know. And that's an easy drive.
Back in the day, it was the mounting of giant tires that turned these trucks into monsters. But what turned the monsters into extreme machines was the technology to support them. With each tire weighing over 800 pounds, monster truck builders were forced to develop engines that would provide the greatest power available in the shortest amount of time.
These trucks run 1,500 horsepower, you can get right up to an obstacle, and because of your 1,500 horsepower, use all of that, and it'll take the truck and just launch it like it was a rocket.
You actually feel yourself be pushed back into the seat when you lay into the throttle. It feels like you've unleashed a rocket.
With 1,500 horsepower under the hood, the one thing keeping these monster trucks from going faster, higher, and farther was their excessive weight.
Now we have to build them lighter, faster, make them jump higher. So we go from a vehicle that weighed 17,000, 18,000 pounds to building something the 10,000, 11,000 pound range.
In order to lighten the load, triangle and tube technology was developed to replace the heavy stock frames of the early trucks. Light tubing is welded together into a series of overlapping triangles to form one body. And because the triangle is the strongest load-bearing geometric shape, these chassis are incredibly strong. But a light chassis and a 1,500 horsepower engine tends to hurtle a truck very high and very far. The quest to land softly and safely gave rise to what is considered to be the sport's biggest technological advance.
Suspension is the biggest innovation, and we stepped up suspension quite some time ago, but we never got it down to a science. We're getting it down to a science now.
Replacing the old leaf spring suspensions used by standard trucks with strong bars linking the chassis to the axles was the first step. 4 bars connected from the center of the frame to the front axle, coupled with 4 bars connected to the rear axle, give both axles greater freedom of movement over the obstacles on a monster truck track.
These are the 4-link bars when they're referred to, right here, you see them. And we can adjust these. On the newer trucks, you'll see they got 4 holes or 3 holes right here. And what you can do is you can adjust how fast the truck will lift up and how much it'll squat by adjusting into each hole.
With the advancement in suspension technology, good old trial and error is no longer an option. These days, monster truck builders are more apt to work a computer mouse than turn a wrench.
The first trucks built, were never designed on a computer or anything. Now we got CAD designed trucks, state-of-the-art suspension. You can figure out actually on the computer how the travel is going to go through, what's going to hit, what's not going to work. You can do that all beforehand. You don't want to just go out there and say, hey, all right, let's just jump this and see if it works. That doesn't work out a whole lot. So computer design has really helped out to advance the sport.
But perhaps the most important advancement in monster truck technology is the development of the shock absorber.
One of the newest features you're seeing on a lot of the trucks are the nitrogen shocks. And that's kind of the evolution of the shock that's allowed them to go higher, further, and jump a lot longer now. Like I said, on the Inferno, as you'll see, there's a big difference. Of course, this truck was built in 1989. That's how old this truck is. These have the coilover shocks. In 89, and 10 years ago, they were the top of the line shock.
While some monster trucks still employ the coilover shock absorbers, nitrogen shocks seem to be the standard, with the edge going to the driver who can best advance this science.
Well, it's actually a pretty good thing we've got the small tires on here because we can really take a good look at the shocks that we've got on this thing. What we're running here is it's a 26-inch travel, position-sensitive, external bypass shock. These are my latest in-shock technology for the monster trucks. I started years ago with what you see on 99% of the trucks out here. Well, I call my stage 1 shock. I've got some ideas in mind. I don't want to give up all my secrets right now because it's still in the works, but we're actually going to add a linear spring rate. Say you had a coil spring that's 26 inches tall and it's got 100 pounds per inch. For every inch you move it, that'd be 100 pounds, 200, 300. A nitrogen shock doesn't work anything like that. The pressure starts compressing. It goes 100, 200, 400, 800, 1,000. It jumps up like that, so it's not a real linear rate to it. And that's a problem on the shocks that I'm going to try to eliminate.
I'm kind of fortunate. I have some new shock technology on this truck. What we have there is a valve. It controls the fluid coming from our main shock over to our nitrogen-charged reservoir. Lyle Hancock is the guy that basically came up with this concept.
That gray knob that's on the top gives me the adjustability to slow the displacement of oil into that reservoir. And in doing so, I can crank it down enough that I can slow the shaft velocity going up in there, which starts the dampening. From full extension, it automatically starts right there, slowing the truck down. And with that technology, this is the first step of what I intend to do this year. So my next design is going to incorporate a 4-inch diameter shock absorber with a lot more surface area to control the fluid flow back and forth inside of that shock body. Then I'll come back and incorporate with a coil spring around that, so I'll only have one shock on each corner. We'll have 30 to 36 inches of travel, 30 foot of air. That's going to come down. Some of the technology we're working on today.
The planning that goes into designing and building a monster truck pales in comparison to the planning it takes to run a monster truck event. Monster jams are held in large stadiums and arenas in every major city in this country, and a few others as well. By the time the trucks arrive for competition, what had been football fields and basketball courts have already been filled with tons of dirt. That in itself is a science, and the man in charge holds a PhD in the very subject. He's called Dr. Dirt.
Yes, that's what they call me, Dr. Dirt. Well, I guess it's just I've been around a long time, and I've mastered the art of laying dirt in facilities, building stadiums all over the world. So therefore I have the title of being Dr. Dirt. I guess it's like a PhD. You go to college, but this college here was the College of Hard Knocks.
Lenny Fuller is currently in charge of every aspect of preparing a venue for a monster truck show. But it was his obsession with finding the right mix of dirt that led to his colorful nickname.
We looked for a type of consistency that would give us about 60 to 65% clay type material, and then the rest can be a fines, a sandy type material. And that gives us a good mix. It gives us a very compactable, strong material, but something that we can work with machines, something that will break apart for our molding of the jumps and ramps and things like that.
For the ramps and jumps to endure a monster truck event, the dirt used must be at least 60% clay. The moisture content must also be between 12 and 15% in order to mold and shape it into a usable track.
Dirt will actually wear out, it dies. And as you can see here, this dirt is pretty good shape, it holds together. But when dirt dies, you can't get a ball. You can't get to make a ball. You've lost all the nutrients in the dirt, all the little things that help hold it together. Dirt's not dirt. Dirt wears out. I know people laugh at me when I say that, but it wears out, and we have to replace it.
The cost of dirt is, well, dirt cheap, but moving it can be very expensive. Most venues keep a stockpile nearby, but to keep the hauling costs in check, Lenny must figure out exactly how much dirt needs to be moved.
For a typical monster truck event, 250 to 300 truckloads. And that's about 30 yards to a load. 3,000 pounds to the yard. This year, we've moved a little over 660,000 yards of dirt, so that would be close to 900,000 tons. I guess if you sat down and looked at it, there is a lot of science involved in what we do, and we take a lot of pride in our tracks, and rightfully so. To me, that's what makes the whole thing work. If we don't have a good track, we don't have a good show.
One of the most compelling features of a monster truck show is the spectacular result a driver gets when attempting to push his machine to the limit.
Everybody would push it to the limit, you know, but who's going to be the brave one to push it over the limit? We don't know what's going to happen. They don't know what's going to happen. That's the excitement, and that's what they come to see. Actually, people get kind of bummed when I don't crash.
When you have 10,000 pounds underneath your butt and you're controlling it, oh, it's more than a rush. What an adrenaline rush.
The trucks are 10,000 pounds average, 1,500 horsepower. Obviously that's a lot of horsepower, but that's a lot of truck to be moving, and they will fly.
When you accelerate into a ramp as hard as we do, and that truck will get up there 30 feet in the air, you know you're kind of in trouble, and everything just goes to a standstill. It's something that happens so fast, but yet it's slow motion.
When you're in the air and you're coming down, it seems like from the stands it's just a second or two, which it is, but it seems minutes to me. On a good day, it's a great feeling. On a bad day, it's kind of like jumping out of a plane without a parachute.
My skydiving, it's almost comparable to that. It's more than skydiving.
As close as you can get to the best ride out there.
The way these trucks twist, turn, and tumble down the track is testament to the fearlessness of the drivers.
The only fear that I would have is completely making a disaster out of the truck to where we couldn't fix it. Hoping that it wasn't total, so we could get it ready for the next weekend or the next day.
There's a momentary second in time that it freezes. And nobody can really relate to that unless you're in maybe the front car of the baddest roller coaster in the United States.
It's a lot like the most awesome roller coaster ride you ever been on in your life. It's got its ups and its downs and flips and turns.
The guy who wrecks the best or the wildest actually can win the whole freestyle competition.
Monster truck drivers routinely take their machines to a new level of defying gravity. The bigger the obstacle, the more aggressive they become.
Once I hit the ramp, I always like to go bigger than everybody else. I try to make the highest jumps. Get up in the air like that, I sit up there, and I was a fan long before I was a driver. I'm like, was that good enough for them? That's how I feel when I'm up there. It's fun, it's great, you're flying, but then when you land, you remembered what happened, because it kind of hurts.
The development of state-of-the-art suspension systems allows longer and higher jumps, requiring the drivers to make the necessary adjustments.
A few weeks ago, I didn't have the shocks set right. It took off, and when I was over the cars, it was level, but the shocks were bottom out, and next thing I know, I was looking at the dirt, and it was straight down. It was like, how'd that happen?
If I'm hanging my hand out the window, trying to see a reaction from the crowd, see everybody in the crowd holding their hands up. It's really neat to be able to relate with the people and see them relate back to you.
You might cartwheel, barrel roll it. You turn around, you look at the fans, they're standing up, their hands are in the air, they're cheering, ranting and raving, You gotta love it. That's what Monster Trucks is all about.
Every time you go out there, you have to be ready for a crash.
Cartwheels and crashes make monster truck shows exciting. After all, what goes up must come down. But the safety of the drivers and the fans must come first.
Safety is very important. That is my husband, that is the father of my children. When I get out here and I'm sitting in the stands, there's nothing I can do to protect him. I know that he has all the safety equipment and all the features, and everybody out there is watching to make sure that these drivers are safe.
Safety, to me, is absolute protection of not just the driver, but everybody around him.
These vehicles are designed with a lot of safety in mind. We have a lot of roll cage in these trucks and design them for the driver's safety.
The roll cage on a monster truck is actually part of the overall chassis. It employs the same triangle and tube technology which absorbs and disperses the impact energy of a rollover. Because of all that, it takes a driver at least 15 minutes to buckle into the safety zone.
Some things that you need to do with the safety portion of it is actually retain your body, hold it down in the seat, because you're going to get bounced around pretty good no matter what you do. Two shoulder harnesses, two lap belts, one center hold down. It's all here. It's got a quick release system, so you plug it in, and you reach and you pull, and you grab a hold of that. The light's about turned green. I get this all tightened up, and I'm about ready to go racing, and I grab a hold of the steering wheel and just hang on kind of for dear life. And then when I get all done, I was like, I want to get out of this thing. It was successful. One twist with your fingers, and it's all off.
Specially designed racing helmets and separate neck braces are mandatory. The seats and harnesses may hold the body tight, but they do not prevent the head from bouncing around uncontrollably.
It can be a rough ride. Some of the landings definitely can be rough. But if you've got the truck set up right, that's what makes all the difference in the world. Like I say, if you've got yourself fitted in there right, and there's enough safety precautions taken that usually, even if you're tumbling and rolling the thing, you're going to get out and walk away.
There are other dangers truck designers must think of where safety is concerned.
This little red handle right here, which is marked fire extinguisher or fire, there's a pin in it which we remove just before we go racing. What this is a halon system. Should there be an event of a fire, I can simply push this handle in, and we have distribution nozzles inside of this cab that will extinguish, put out a fire for a controlled amount of time.
For added safety, each driver is required to wear a fire retardant suit. It consists of 3 layers, each of which resist flames for up to 10 seconds, giving the driver an extra 30 seconds to escape a burning truck.
The greatest safety feature I think that's ever been put in a monster truck is the remote ignition interrupter system, where there are track officials positioned all over the track, and at any given time, if they think we're driving too wild, getting too close to the sidelines, or if they think we've hit our head on something and knocked ourselves out, they can just push a button and cut the truck off.
The trucks have progressed so much and advanced technology-wise in the past years, and creating new shocks and making improvements in the chassis and safety equipment. The bar does keep being raised.
We'll pull off these big stunts you see in these violent crashes, and never once when I'm wrecking have I been worried about my own personal safety. I usually just jump out of it when I'm done, and it was like, boy, was that a ride.
The science under the hood and the safety inside the cab are what give these monsters the ability to defy gravity and return their drivers safely to Earth. But it's what's on the outside that gives each one of these monster trucks its own unique identity. From the choice of body type to the custom paint job, these creations come to life with every stroke of the airbrush. You could say it's the perfect marriage of science and art.
We went with the 57 Chevy just to be different. I mean, we had the pickup truck, and it was starting to get old, so we wanted to spark it up. The name Avenger came from my dad's drag car from back in the 60s and early 70s. He used to race a Fiat. It was called Avenger. On the front of the Fiat, similar to the hood of my truck, there was a skull with some flames on it that were like a 1960s style. Well, I showed my airbrush guy, I says, look, this is what my dad did. I want to have the same type of Avenger. He says, no. We had to make it into the 2000s. So he made it more modern. The kids love it, the fans love it. All the nostalgic car, show car people appreciate what I've done. They love it. There's other older vehicles out there that have this sort of touch, but I'm just one more in the league now that has something good.
This is a dream job for me, definitely.
Ironically, the same design team has created the distinct identities of many of the newer trucks. While their youthful enthusiasm is evident in the designs, it's their 21st century methods that have transformed this art into a science.
I get a chance to work on some of the monster trucks, and that's a lot of fun. That's obviously one of the highlights of the job. We get to use a lot of creativity in designing the monster trucks, so I have a lot of fun with that.
The process of designing a monster truck depends on who is asking for the monster truck. In some cases, a sponsor may want to get involved in the monster truck industry, and then we're going to take a look at how their logo will fit really nice on the truck and look real cool out on the track. In other cases, we get to start from scratch and really just come up with the craziest characters and really use our imagination and try and come up with something really out of this world that'll get the fans' attention.
I'll usually do a drawing, scan it, and bring it into Photoshop and do all the coloring from there. Some of my favorite things to draw are definitely comic books. I started reading at a very early age, and I was very attracted to the art in comic books, and definitely kind of modeled my style after that. In certain opportunities, it's helped me to give our clients certain things we wanted. Where Carl Malone didn't want a photo, he wanted to be illustrated. He wanted to be kind of a comic book character. So in that case, it was good because I was able to render him in that way.
What I'm a big fan of is the characters of the trucks, the bulldozers, the monster mutts, even Gravedigger. It's really a character. It's almost a person or a thing that people know. It's almost more than a truck. It's like a living thing.
You have no idea when you're drawing that sketch if it is actually going to become a truck. It's like 80% of the time it's not going to. We do so many designs, we do so many ideas that just never make it. But when you do get that one that you see go through the course of, you know, all the stages it takes to finally get to that final truck, it's very exciting when you see it perform and, you know, hit those cars and fans go crazy, and it's a very satisfying feeling.
At a small garage in New Jersey, one of the most famous designs is applied to one of the most famous trucks. Gravedigger is often reincarnated.
Dennis's truck here is in pieces, which makes it a lot easier. At first, we had him in one piece. It was a one-piece shell. I think due to all the crashes, this way they can order like panels from us, type of thing. They went ahead and started making the body in sections. For instance, they pop a wheelie or something like that and break it back half. You know, they'll repair this, and they'll black it out to a certain point of the truck, and when I come back in and I just try and tie the artwork back in, and pretty much you can see when the repair is done that it looks like an original job to where, you know, nothing ever happened to it.
But make no mistake about it, bringing Gravedigger back to life is painstaking work.
A Gravedigger from start to finish, 36 to 40 hours. I guess, you know, you asked me the favorite part of the job, I would say watching it come alive. Each step, it just brings it out that much more. And right now I'm in the process of 3D'ing the tombstones. This here is a darker green than what I did. The first is a lime green, this tends to be a darker green. This way you can see it, so it'll actually show you the 3D in the tombstones. Might not look like much now, but to the end of the job and all that, you'll start seeing everything come out. What I'm doing now is I'm going to peel everything off, all the adhesive, so I can get everything cleaned up, and I'll start doing some hand lettering on the tombstones.
The names on the tombstones represent a litany of competitors that through the years the digger has sent to the grave. And each time a new body is created, the names are once again hand-painted to repose in this iconographic graveyard.
There's times I went out on the road, stayed up all night. It's the show must go on type of thing, and whatever it takes to get it, you know, to keep it going. Makes you feel good when you do see the show that, you know, that's what you stayed up for, and this and that. It works out. It makes it worth your while, I guess you'd say.
That body style and that paint job, kids that have never seen a monster truck before, if you line them all up they'll walk up to Gravedigger and go like, wow, check that out, you know. And they never labeled it as the Ford, the Chevrolet, or the Dodge. That's the Gravedigger truck, you know. And people are going to come see it.
We came all the way from Phillipsburg, New Jersey to see Gravedigger race today. It's his favorite truck.
Gravedigger by far is the most popular truck out there.
He likes men. Gravedigger.
Every spectator has a favorite truck, and probably the leader of all of that would be Dennis Anderson and Gravedigger. He has lived his life the whole time. It's not about winning and losing. It's about those fans coming back.
Thanks in large part to Dennis Anderson's Gravedigger, the popularity of monster trucks grows to this day. Events once held in county fairgrounds have moved to 60,000-seat arenas, often packed to capacity.
There's no other feeling like having 60,000 fans screaming and yelling for you. A lot of people think we can't hear them over them loud motors and with our helmets, but you can. And the more they're screaming, the more they're hollering, the more we're pumped up.
It's all about the fans.
It's all about fans.
They're the number one thing.
They're always number one.
They're the most rewarding part of the day.
Fans are my livelihood.
Obviously, that's what keeps us doing this.
Everything I heard when I started with this, it's only going to last a couple years. It'll be a phase and everybody will get over it.
You know, I've been at this 20 years. I gain fans at every entire show. It's just unbelievable how this sport's growing.
It's great entertainment at a great value. There's a $5 kids ticket. Our average ticket price is $12. An average NASCAR ticket is $80. We really market family entertainment.
To that end, each monster truck event is preceded by what is known as the pit party. It's a chance for the fans to get an up-close look at these monsters and their favorite drivers.
The accessibility to the drivers is really something that makes us unique. Nobody's going to go away without getting an autograph if they want one. You won't see that in baseball, you won't see that in basketball, you won't see it in football, NASCAR, or anything. And, you know, as a result of that, our demographic is almost completely flipped over in the past 11 years since I've been here. We've gone from a very blue-collar, very male, 18 to 34 dynamic to family.
I always like seeing the little kid there with the gleam in his eye, you know, from the monster truck, and the thing is just bigger than life to him. And to see a smile on his face is just everything to me.
I see more and more little girls here at the arenas, and it's breathtaking. A lot of them come up and they ask for an autograph, and I say, so what do you want to be when you grow up? A monster truck driver, so that's kind of cool.
Everything that we do with these monster trucks is driven, heart-filled from the fans. It's all about the fans.
While the driver and fan interaction is important, it's still the evolution of the technology which propels monster trucks that marks the popularity growth of these beasts. And because fans have now come to expect what was once thought to be spectacular as merely routine, the designers and builders must keep setting the bar even higher.
Right now, I think the hot ticket and the big evolution in monster trucks is suspensions. We're doing these huge jumps, big jumps. We've got chassis that hold up to the abuse, but now the drivers are the ones taking the hit. If we can get the trucks to land good, hey, this sport's got a long ways to go.
I've said before, the stadiums are too small. We're going to see runs of 100 feet to a jump. We're going to see 40 to 50 foot of air, and it'll be within the next 24 to 36 months.
I'm not kidding you. This thing could possibly, in 20 years, be a remote-controlled monster truck show. Who knows? It'll be computerized. They'll computerize the whole thing. 10 trucks coming in and doing a whole show without having guys driving. I don't want to see that. I'd rather see the man behind the wheel.
You'd rather be the man.
I'd rather be the man behind the wheel.